If you are currently toggling between 12 resort tabs, screenshotting Instagram posts at midnight, and texting your fiance like, wait, but what if this one is actually better? I really need to tell you, we're gonna get through this together because what you're experiencing is not indecision, it's exposure overload. There are over 200 all-inclusive resorts just in Riviera Maya alone. That does not include Puerto Vallarta, it does not include Cabo, it does not include Jamaica or the DR. That's just one stretch of coastline in Mexico. So you're not supposed to evaluate 200 resorts on your own. And yet the internet has you convinced that if you just research a little harder and scroll a little longer, read a few more reviews, you'll eventually find the perfect one. So let me hold your hand when I tell you this. This is not a research problem. It's a filtering problem. And the algorithm, it's not qualified to plan your wedding. It's excellent at showing you pretty sky terraces and dramatic champagne pours. It's not excellent at assessing airport transfer times, guest budget, mobility concerns, or whether your 72 guests are going to enjoy the atmosphere once the ceremony is over. So that's where strategy comes in, and that's where I come in. So when I tell my clients I like their Google filter, I really mean that literally. My job is not to show you everything. My job is to eliminate almost everything so that what remains is super clear, super aligned, and very manageable. So let me walk you through exactly how I narrow couples down to 3 resorts without spiraling, because there is a method to this, and it's not aesthetic first. So before I give you the framework, I want to gently call out something. The biggest mistake couples make when narrowing resorts is focusing primarily on aesthetics and social media opinions. I get it. I spiral too. I will absolutely hyperfixate on the perfect option. That's very human, especially in today's social media world. But a beautiful sky terrace means nothing if your guests can't comfortably afford the rooms. A viral TikTok review means nothing if the resort layout doesn't work for your group dynamic. And 5-star Google reviews means nothing if the beach conditions aren't aligned with what you envisioned. So when you choose based only on visuals, you're choosing based on someone else's experience. And we need to choose based on yours. And that happens through 3 filters: location, budget, and guest experience. When couples come to me, they often start by sending screenshots. Love this vibe, we love this pool, we love this one. But before we even talk about pools, I want to talk about questions that kind of feel less glamorous, I'm going to be honest, but are far more strategic. Where are your guests flying from? Are most of them going to be using the Cancun airport? How far are you comfortable asking them to travel once they land? There is a very big difference between a 25-minute airport transfer and an hour and 45 minutes in a shuttle after a long travel day. For some couples, that's totally fine, but for others, especially when you're inviting grandparents or families with young children, that really matters a lot. So when we look at beach quality, and I don't mean is it pretty in photos, I mean, is it swimmable? Is it rocky? Is it calm? Is it historically prone to seaweed? Do you care if the water is turquoise, or are you more pool focused? Then we talk about resort layout. Some properties are boutique and incredibly walkable. Everything feels very intimate and close. And others are expansive, which can feel luxurious, but also means a lot of walking or a golf cart, transportation, depending on how your group moves. And finally, the vibe: modern and sleek, tropical and lush, lively and social, quiet and refined. Last month, I had a couple who fell in love with a particular resort because the ceremony terrace was stunning, truly stunning. But once we walked through the airport transfer time, the size of the property, they remembered that several key guests had mobility considerations. It kind of became very clear that although the terrace was beautiful, the overall experience would not feel seamless for the group, and it wasn't the right match. That one conversation kind of eliminated it, not because it wasn't gorgeous, but because it wasn't aligned. And alignment is what we're after. Now we talk about budget, and this is where a lot of spiraling also happens, because couples often say our wedding budget is $40,000, or we want to say under $30,000. That's super healthy, and that feels a very solid number. But we also have to put resort selection in consideration, especially when it comes to guest rooms. Are your guests going to be able to afford the rooms that are provided at the hotel that you select? So, what is your comfort range for your personal stay? What's the average guest cost for 3 nights? Does that number feel realistic for your group? Other thing when it comes to budget is like the little nitty gritty upgrades, flowers, decor, photography, videography, dance floor, DJ, the fireworks. I had a couple a while back who's had a clear budget number in mind, and we found a resort they actually loved. Beautiful rooms, incredible venue, great food. But when we ran the numbers for guest rooms alone, the average per person cost made them seriously nervous. Not like, let's think about this, but like seriously nervous that their guests would be able to afford and even attend. So I told them straight, that's not your resort. Even if it's the prettiest one, if a resort pricing is going to create stress during your engagement, it will create stress during your wedding. Budget should create calm, not tension. And so when we apply this filter honestly, entire categories of resorts fall quickly. And that's freeing, not limiting. And a good rule of thumb, if the room average makes you wince when you look at it, move on. There are incredible resorts at every price point. The goal is to find the one where the number feels good and the experience still delivers. Those resorts absolutely exist. I want to pause here for a second because I know some of you are listening to this and thinking, great, but I don't even know where to start with my own numbers. That is exactly why I built my free Destination Wedding Workbook. It walks you through all of this in a very structured way, starting with your must-haves, both for the wedding itself and the resort, so you know what you actually value before you start comparing price points. So there's a full budget breakdown inside, organized by tier, so you can see what 15 versus 35K versus 80K actually looks like in practice. There's also a guest list section that helps you think through your A list versus your B list, which, by the way, completely changes how you evaluate resorts. Most couples try to do all of this in their heads, and the workbook gets it out of your head and onto paper or Google Doc so you can actually make decisions. It's free, it's linked below. Download it, fill it in, and then keep watching because what you figure out is there's going to make filter 3 make a lot more sense. Now, this is my favorite filter because it's the one couples underestimate the most. I want you to stop choosing for hypothetical guest opinions and start choosing for actual guest dynamic. Who is on your invite list? Really? Are they mostly in their late 20s and ready to celebrate? Are they mixed ages with extended family? Do you have guests who need accessible pathways? Do you have a crowd that will stay up dancing until midnight or 1, that prefers like music and a good conversation over dinner? Do you have guests who need accessible pathways? Do you have a crowd that will stay up dancing until 3 in the morning, that prefers live music and a good conversation over dinner? They're different guests. Some resorts are high energy, some are refined and relaxed. Some have swim up culture and pool parties, others are quieter and more lounge focused. Now, neither is better, but one will feel more natural for your group. And I worked with a couple not too long ago who had a very specific vision: romantic, intimate, adult atmosphere. They kept gravitating towards a resort that checked every box on paper. It was beautiful, well priced, great reviews, but when we actually talked through their guest list, and I mean really talked through it, they mentioned that about a third of their guests were coming with young kids. And this resort, while stunning, is an adults only property. So one question, that's all it took. Entire direction changed. That's what happens when you run this filter early. You stop falling in love with resorts that were never going to work, and you start spending your energy on the ones that actually will. We also look at room category mix here. If most of your guests are likely booking entry-level rooms, we need to make sure those rooms are strong, not just the top tier suites, because your guest experience of the resort is going to be shaped by the room they actually sleep in, not the one in the brochure, okay? When you view the resort through the lens of your real guest list, not imagined criticism, not what if they think it's too expensive, but actual personalities and actual logistics, your choices are going to narrow very quickly and it becomes less emotional and more strategic. Here's the part I want you to hear clearly. You do not need to see every option in order to make a confident decision. Reviews will always contradict. One couple's best food ever is another couple's it was fine. So experiences vary because expectations vary, and your job is not to find the unanimous praise. Your job is to find alignment with your priorities, and when you apply location, budget, and guest experience honestly, you should land on 3 strong options, not 12, 3. And from there, the decisions become thoughtful instead of frantic. So once you've narrowed to 3 resorts, something interesting happens. The deciding factor often stops being the resort itself. It becomes the details, the venue, the food, the guest experience, whether the vibe actually matches your vision when you dig into it. And that's exactly what I'm breaking down in my next video because I just got back from staying at Unico 2087 in the Riviera Maya, and I'm giving you my full honest take. The venues, the food, the pools, the beach situation, the budget reality, and most importantly, whether it's actually the right resort for your wedding. And that video is up next. If you want help narrowing your 3 in the meantime, that's literally what I do in consultations. I filter, I compare, I guide, and I help you move forward without spiraling. You don't have to do this alone, and you don't have to research 200 resorts. You just need a filter, and I'm very good at that. Cheers!